Welcome to the Body Smart Podcast, where we remove roadblocks to fitness and health to empower you to master your health habits. We help you become body smart.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Body Smart Podcast. I have a special guest in here today on the Vodcast. This is Alexis Gerst with Running My Best Life. So that's a blog, and her Instagram page is Running My Best Life. And how long ago did you start the blog?
I started the blog about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
It was the fall of 2018, right after I ran my first half marathon.
Cool. And so we'll learn more about the blog, but it's got some neat stuff in there as she details kind of her running journey. And so you are in the Air Force, and that's kind of how you came to Utah, was through the Air Force. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. How long have you been here in Utah then?
So I've been in Utah coming up on 2 years now. So right before I started my blog, actually, I got here. And I should throw a disclaimer in here really quick. Anything I say represents only my own views, not the views of the U.S. Air Force, the Department of Defense, or the government.
Perfect. That makes sense. That's great. How long have you been in the Air Force then?
I've been in the Air Force for almost 6 years.
Almost 6 years. Awesome. Okay. So you started out pretty young in the Air Force. What kind of drove you to decide to go that route?
I did. So I joined the Air Force at 19, and I planned to go to college. I was the valedictorian of my high school class.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Was fully bent on that route and applied for all the scholarships. Didn't really get as many as I was hoping for, and just kind of in an effort to avoid the student loans, I knew I still wanted to go to school. But I decided to join the military instead as a way to help pay for my education and go that route instead.
That's a smart way to go. I know several people that have kind of done the same thing, and it's helps pay for school and get you through. And
it does. And
that's great. Yeah. So in that journey, then that's kind of what helped bring about your running journey was your experience in the Air Force. So tell us a little bit more about that, how you got into running and kind of why running your best life stemmed from your time in the Air Force.
It is. So in the military, you have to take a physical fitness test at least every year if you score a 90% or higher on it. And if you score between a 75 and a 90, it's every 6 months. Okay. So I've always scored above a 90 on mine, so it's been once a year. So that's been good. I've always been kind of fitness minded.
Sure.
But I really started running. I would train for my fitness test a couple months before I'd start getting going again. And every year it kind of trended where my times got a little bit worse and a little bit worse and a little bit worse. And I was like, oh, crud, if this continues, I'm going to be failing. And if I want to have a career in the Air Force, that can't happen. Okay. So from there I decided, if I'm going to get better at running, how do you do that? Everybody says you have to run more.
Right.
Okay, that's pretty obvious. So then if you want to run more, I'm going to have to enjoy it, right? I'm not going to slog through this. I'm not going to stick to it if I'm not enjoying it.
Yeah.
So from there, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to enjoy the scenery a little bit. I'm going to be able to breathe while I run. And that was kind of where everything changed for me. I just slowed down, let myself run as slow as I needed to be able to keep running for, at first it was 30 minutes at a time.
Right.
And then I bumped it up to 45 minutes and then an hour, and I started training for a 10K.
That's awesome.
And that's kind of what got me all into it.
Yeah. I love that you allowed yourself to enjoy it instead of it being like a task, instead of it being about so many of the things that we try to make running about, like, oh, I need to do it to get in shape, or I need to do it to lose weight, or I need to do it to whatever, qualify for this or that, or just to do it to enjoy it, to be like, hey, I'd like to get into running. I know that it's a key to me staying fit and healthy and being able to accomplish my other goals. And so I'm just going to do it at a level that I can enjoy it. Right. And that really unlocks your ability to run better anyway. Mm-hmm. Like you said, the miles add up. The more you run, the better you get at it. And so it doesn't always have to be fast or as hard as you can. In fact, you're better off, which we learn with the metabolic tests, right? Right. That we're better off going slow because we burn more fat and we can go longer, things like that. So that's awesome that you kind of discovered that on your own. Most runners don't allow themselves that leeway. They try to push harder every time they're out there and then wind up burning out. Right. Had you done that in the past? Kind of gone through bouts of like, I'm going to start running and pushed really hard and
I did, especially when I first joined the military. So before I went to basic training, the recruiter kind of scared you a little bit. They were like, "Oh, make sure you can run for 30 minutes without stopping." And at that point, I had barely run 10 minutes in my life without stopping.
Sure.
So I was like, "Okay, we got to figure this out." So before I left, it was just trying to run for 30 minutes, and if you know you have to go that long without stopping, you're gonna slow down naturally. And then during basic training, they also did that. They were like, "We're just gonna set the timer and you're going to keep running. You're not allowed to walk, but just keep running until we tell you to stop." So that kind of instilled that learning to just go slow so that you can build up your endurance.
Perfect. I love that. That's definitely a good way to do it. I prefer running for time instead of running for a distance for that same purpose. It's like I just need to go, as much as I can go for 30 minutes. And usually not even as hard as I can go, just whatever I can comfortably sustain. That's where I want to hang out for whatever period of time I want to run for.
Right.
So if you're training for a marathon, every so often you should run about the amount of time that you want to run a marathon in, and just go at the pace you can go to sustain that. And eventually that'll get faster and faster, and you'll cover more ground. That's kind of my philosophy with running. So as you're getting into running and training and things like that, you started this blog. What was kind of the idea behind the blog, Running My Best Life?
So Running My Best Life, like I started it after I did my first half marathon, and that was where I really fell in love with the sport of running. That sense of accomplishment and training for something and then crossing the finish line.
Right.
That really changed everything for me, and I wanted to start sharing that with other people.
Oh, cool.
And just sharing the message of running doesn't have to be this thing that sucks all the time. You can enjoy it and you can have a lot of fun with it, and then teaching new runners the things that they need to know to enjoy that. And that's kind of the premise around my blog right now. Is I really love the half marathon distance.
Yeah, it's a great distance.
It's a great distance to get started, and I like to help people kind of learn everything they need from the training, how to go shopping for shoes, the fueling behind it. I love talking about fueling. And just learning all those different things. What's a gear check bag, and how do you get to the starting line? How should you pace yourself?
Right.
All those things that you might not know starting out as a new runner, but then after you run a few of them, you kind of take that information for granted. So just helping organize all of that and help people through their first half marathon.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and it does kind of make you nervous when you sign up for that first event, right?
It's like, I
don't know what to expect. I'm not sure what all is going to happen. There's a lot of aspects to it where it's like, I don't know. And that sometimes could keep somebody from signing up in the first place because they're not sure what to do. So that's an awesome service, I guess, for the running community. So you mentioned, we were talking earlier that you kind of like to geek out about stats and figures and things like that. Were you kind of, before you started running, were you into athletics at all, or were you more bookworm than athlete at that point?
So I was actually just talking to my husband about this last night, because when I was growing up, personally, I wasn't as much of an athlete, but I rode horses.
Oh, okay.
And I was like my horse's strength and conditioning coach. I got into the nerdy stuff on what they needed to eat, how I needed to train them. And then I was always training for something and getting ready for some competition when I rode horses. And now, running's a lot cheaper version. Now that I don't live with my parents, and they had a horse farm, so they were paying for most of it. But now I do a lot of the same things with myself as a runner that I did with my horses. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, no, totally. There's probably a lot of carryover there in terms of just principles of training and nutrition and recovery and things like that. And sometimes we probably push ourselves harder than we would our horse, right? You let them rest more than you would let yourself rest, or you give them a break on a hard day when they just don't have it. You're like, I must have run too hard. Well, we sometimes don't do that with ourselves.
Yeah, with yourself, you know how you're feeling. You can tell where the aches and pains are with a horse, or even if you're a running coach training somebody else, you don't necessarily know that unless they tell you. A horse can't tell you. You got to kind of pay attention to how they're acting.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what types of events did you do with the horses? I'm just curious. What?
I tried out all sorts of things when I was in middle level in high school. Yeah, so I did endurance riding for a time, 25-mile endurance rides, which is crazy to think now people run marathons that are
Yeah.
faster than, or farther than that, but I thought that was a crazy distance to ride a horse at that age.
Sure.
I also was into some rodeo events. I did roping,
Okay.
barrel racing, and some other speed events
Oh,
too.
cool. That's fun. Yeah, that takes a lot of coordination with you and the horse. Like, you got to be on the same page
Definitely.
with barrel racing, especially. Well, and roping too. If the horse isn't paying attention, you're not going to hit your target, right?
Right.
Interesting. Cool. So as you got into the blog, what kind of fueled the idea of sharing some of this information? Is that kind of what started it in the first place, was wanting to share, or was it more documenting at first?
I think at first it started out more as documenting and just kind of sharing my experience and what I had gone through, and that was kind of what I had seen with some of the other running blogs.
Yeah.
It seemed like there was a lot of marathon training blogs, but not as many focused on the half marathon distance.
Yeah.
And not as many for beginners.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where I filled in, and then just breaking, your first half marathon out into all the different elements that go into it.
Right. Yeah, that's so true, that there are so many blogs and runners out there that talk about how to be elite, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not very many that talk about how to just be your average runner.
Right.
And it's funny because most runners are just the average runner. And when they talk about like sports nutrition and blah blah blah, so I talk with patients about that all the time when they bring up stuff about like food timing and all these other aspects that are for athletes, but most of us aren't really athletes, right? We love to do what we're doing and we like to get out and run, but we're not sponsored, paid for athletes that are doing this, 3 to 6 hours a day, that this is kind of our main focus or job.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes the nutrition that's recommended for an athlete that's a sponsored athlete is different than maybe what we should be doing. Is
a little more extreme.
Like, I ran 45 minutes today, which is awesome, but it's not like depleting you to the point that your nutrition is maybe like, oh my gosh, if you don't get this right at this point in time in your day, like maybe a little different. And so I think that's cool to have kind of a blog more centered around somebody that's just your average runner rather than the ultra elite.
Right.
Yeah, that's a way to fill a niche there.
Yes.
That's good. So did you start getting questions from your blog and from your Instagram about running and stuff like that?
I did start getting some questions. Some people were wondering a lot of questions around like gear and what are the best products to use, because there's a lot out there and it can be very overwhelming, and I kind of went through the same thing myself, right? You just order a bunch of stuff off of Amazon and start trying it and see which ones you like and which ones work for your body. Like with gels, for example, it took me a while to find some that didn't make my stomach sick, and just figuring out how to work those into my runs.
Right. Yeah, that's a big thing. We find that some of the high sugar gels really can gut bomb you, which you do not want a few miles in, right?
Right. That's not fun.
Frequent restroom visits are not advised on any run, let alone runs for 13 miles.
Right.
So, as you started testing out different products and giving that advice, like what kind of a response did you get?
So for me personally, I ended up using honey stinger gels. It was kind of the one that ended up working with me. It was a more natural one, yet I still got that boost of natural sugar and energy. Some of the other ones, I tried like some Cliff gels for a specific marathon that I knew would be providing those, and I couldn't stand them. So like after that race, I was like, no, I'm never touching those again. They were just so like that high fructose corn syrup consistency. I can't stand that. Yeah. So but then also with some of the other questions I got, and people were wondering, like, how many miles should I train? What are the things I should focus on mentally in my training as well? So really, I designed the course that I have. 12 weeks to your first half marathon around answering those questions and kind of timing it. The course is designed around the weeks of your training, so we kind of chunk it into like the first week, and then weeks like 2 through 5 and 6 through 8 and then 9 through 11, and then that final week 12 when you're tapering. And just timing those things, like, in the middle of the training, sometimes it's kind of like the doldrums of training. You can get a little bit lost in the monotony and your miles are increasing and you're just kind of tired all the time and you're not sure if you're pushing it too hard or not enough. So working through that mental process and learning when your body might need an extra day off. Right. That's been something huge that I've learned over time. I've managed to stay injury free for over 2 years of running consistently.
Yeah,
And
that's huge.
sometimes, I mean, I think I'm not pushing myself hard enough, but
That's
I like
okay.
to err on the side of a little bit slower
Right.
for increasing miles.
I
A little bit
agree.
less speed work just to stay consistent, because when you can stay consistent and avoid injury, you're going to get improved faster over time.
Right. Well, nothing is going to set back your progress like taking 6 weeks off because of an injury or something like that, right? I'm definitely more of that live to play another day mentality rather than push it hard today and then blow up for the foreseeable future, right? I always tell all my runners, like, no workout today is worth blowing up your whole program, right? Pushing that one more rep on a lift, or that one more mile, or trying to maintain a certain pace that you have in your head of like, this is what I need to run today.
Right.
That, although it can give you a sense of accomplishment and things like that sometimes, is also usually when we get injured, usually when we kind of blow up the plan. So I always say do that in a very calculated way. If you're going to push yourself, do it, very planned out and part of the overall plan, so that there's recovery built in and other things like that. And if you're just not feeling it on any given day, it's okay to be like, you know what, we'll try again tomorrow, and just kind of go through the motions, and that's okay. Yeah.
I've had to do that a few times. So right now I'm training for the Ogden Marathon. It'll be my first full marathon. So I'm really pushing my mileage up higher than I was used to previously, and getting more intentional about paying attention to your body. So if you are feeling some aches and pains, thinking through whether that's just some soreness or whether that's something really targeted and specific that maybe you need to spend more time stretching, foam rolling, focusing on recovery, or if you just straight up need to take a day off.
Yeah, which sometimes happens, and that's okay. Yeah, no, it's good to kind of take more time in the recovery aspect and the kind of checking in with your body and making sure things are okay. Super important, especially in those longer distances.
Definitely.
So with your course, that's 12-week course. Where do people find your course?
So they can find the course by going to my blog, which is www.runningmybestlife.com. And the 12 weeks to your first half marathon course is actually, there's a link on the top bar that says first half marathon course.
Yeah.
And you can register.
Oh, awesome. So when you decided to build a course, what was kind of the thing that drove that? Was that sitting there looking at what you'd all, organize and categorize and be like, this can help other people? Or was it like, did you set out from the start to do that?
That was not my intention from the start.
Okay.
So like I said at the beginning, it was just kind of documenting my experience and then breaking it down into all those different things.
Yeah.
And then I realized that runners can spend a lot of time just scouring the internet for all this information that's all broken up all over the place.
Yeah.
And a lot of what's in my course, I've actually written about in pieces and chunks in different areas. So it was kind of a consolidation of all those things in a very organized manner.
Cool.
Like I mentioned earlier, organized as to when you need it in your training, so you're getting the information you need when you need it, versus just throwing it all out there and trying to digest some of it and use it.
So how does somebody go through the course? Is it like weekly modules that are unlocked, or is it like they get the whole thing and it just is laid out week by week?
They do get the whole thing at
the beginning.
So as soon as they register, they'll be able to access all 12 weeks. And I do that because some people, when they register, they're not exactly 12 weeks out. So they may be in week 4 or something. Right.
Yeah.
And then I send reminder emails when every module is about that time in their training. So I think there's 2 to 3 reminder emails throughout the course. Hey, go back and revisit this module right now because you're in the middle of your training and you probably need that reminder right now.
Oh, cool. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So got it pretty organized out and everything. That's good. Do people tell you when they register what race they're training for and stuff like that then?
Usually I ask for it. Some people do, some people don't, but it's up to them.
Yeah, interesting. That's always fun to, I love following a runner in their journey and lead up to a race. One of my favorite things. To be able to cheer them on race day and give them a shout out and things like that. But also just to see kind of the different mental processes they go through, and kind of that whole lead up is really fascinating. I've gone to different races or helped athletes prepare for a bunch of different races, and it's pretty fun to see like that whole process and the week of, and then kind of the race recap is one of my favorite things to read. Race recaps is so fun to see like when their training was spot on and things went well. It's so fun to see that and feel that with them, like kind of how that goes. So that's a fun part of the journey. Do you get feedback then when people have a good race? They're like, hey, thank you so much.
They do, yeah. I get a lot of people that either share it on my Facebook page, or I'm very active in a few different running Facebook groups.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones is called Train for a Half Marathon.
Oh, cool.
And there's a really awesome community in that group that's very supportive in
Yeah.
helping people get ready for that.
Is that more of a national one or a local one?
It is a national one,
Okay,
yes.
cool.
And a couple of ladies that are really active in that. There's one that lives in Wyoming and another that lives in Montana. So we're kind of, there's a few in this area.
Western area, yeah.
But there are members from all over, and it's growing pretty quickly.
Cool. Train for a half marathon. I like it. And so you're pretty active in there, and they let you share your course and your content.
They do,
and
yeah.
stuff.
So
That's
every
awesome.
Thursday I do is called Training Tip Thursday.
Oh, cool.
And I usually share either a current blog post that I'm coming out with, or I'll share one of my older ones as kind of like a reminder on one of the core topics.
Oh, so yeah, a lot of the content doesn't go bad, so might as well share it again, because most people didn't get to see it the first time, right? Especially as the group grows, so that's great. Training Tip Thursday, I like it. Yes. What are some of the types of training tips? What do you get?
So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, we did types of training fuel and when to use them and how to use them. So I broke down all of the different types of fuel. So you have, your sports drinks, your energy gels, chews, beans, waffles, bars, all the different things. So kind of like the pros and cons of each one, and then also like when you're first getting into it, how long should you actually be running before you need to start worrying about that at all?
Right.
And then when you do, how often should you take them, and just kind of starting to learn that process.
Sure. Cool. Yeah, that's a big thing. You see a lot of people. It's always interesting in a marathon. Like some people are eating and gelling and things like the whole way through, and then others have very specific strategies of like at mile this I do this, and at mile this I do this, and so yeah, kind of helping people understand when the best time is so that they can work that out on their long runs so that they have a good race experience.
Exactly.
Super helpful. Yeah, having gut issues on a race is not fun. Right. And so I've definitely seen a lot of athletes suffer, especially when they switch things up right at the last second, right? I have seen that happen to a bunch of athletes. A group I know that was doing loaded jaw kind of did that, where they switched their drink right at the very end. Like right before their training, they found this new thing that was supposed to be the latest, greatest, and they all suffered.
Not so much.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that type of a thing, making sure you've tried it on the run and kind of the timing and the purpose of each one. That's important.
For sure.
So as far as training expertise, where do you go to kind of learn more and things like that?
So my favorite thing is books. I love to read books.
Yeah.
I think I read like 48 books last year.
That's awesome.
So it's a lot, and at least half of those are running books.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite authors is Matt Fitzgerald. So
Yeah, me
he's
too.
got a lot on training, on nutrition, and just learning, all those different aspects of like 80-20 running. It's one of my favorite books as far as training philosophies.
Darn straight.
And then one where I got a lot of what I help share with people about nutrition and fueling is the new rules of marathon and half marathon nutrition.
Yeah.
That one's a great one, and it really breaks down like the calculations and how to figure out how much is enough, how much is too much, what's not enough. And I actually found out with that one that I was not fueling nearly enough. So I was able to bump that up, and that really helped my energy levels.
Both pre-race and in race, or?
Yes, and even during like long runs. So previously on a lot of my long runs before I read that book, I wasn't feeling enough because I was like, I'm trying to lose weight. I don't want extra calories.
Right.
And what I actually found out is when I bumped that number up a little bit, I felt better throughout the rest of the day. So before, I was really tired and just dead for the rest of the day, right? So it kind of ruined my Saturday because I'd take a few hours to run and then I'd just be like worthless for the rest of the day. Yeah. And once I started feeling properly, I was able to I mean, I was still tired after a long
Right,
run.
your muscles are still,
We're going to be a little bit exhausted, but I was able to still function like a normal human being. I didn't have to go take a nap for the rest of the day, so that was made a huge difference.
Right, I talk with people about that all the time, that when we push every workout hard, or we have the mentality of like, oh, I'm going to work out really hard for 45 minutes and then sit at the desk the rest of the day, we actually tend to be less active. And as many calories as we can burn in our hour workout or whatever, maybe you burn 800 calories or 600 calories, still not as many as if you increase your calorie burn by, 100 calories for the other 12 hours of the day. You can double that calorie burn, right? So by being more active, if we're looking to lose weight, taking it easier on our workout so that we burn a higher percentage of fat, but not being so exhausted so that I can lead a more active lifestyle is actually better than beating myself up during a workout and then being more sedentary for the rest of the day.
Right, and just being excited and looking forward to your workout the next day.
Yeah,
if you kill yourself one day, and like my mom is just she's getting ready for her first half marathon, so I'm helping her out with this. And one thing I told her, I was like, look, don't kill yourself on one workout.
Not worth it.
Take it a little bit easier than you think you need to, and look forward to the next day, because then you're gonna get back out there and do it again. And really, those consistent, repeated efforts is what's gonna add up to make a big difference.
So true. Consistency beats intensity all day, every day. And I love that message of take it easier than you think you need to. Even that's so valuable, because people want to push themselves. But at the same time, if you're not going to run the next day because you're still recovering, then you're not getting in as many, hours, as many miles, as many minutes on your feet, allowing your body to adapt to the load that you're trying to put on it. And you're not going to have the same result. Slow and steady really does win the race in so many ways. And it's just a hard message. Running really intense 3 times a week does not give us quite the same benefit in terms of just adapting my body to running more. So that's the thing. We can definitely get a great cardiovascular benefit out of it and things like that. So for your health, 3 bouts of intense exercise can be almost as good for your health. But in terms of training and running better and making it a habit that you're going to stick with, finding a way to do it slow enough that you can do it every day is going to be better.
Right. About a month ago, I did a blog post that was titled "Quit Quitting."
Yeah.
And really, the premise behind that, whenever I think that it's getting really hard or I want to quit, I think about, well, what happens if I quit and then I fall out of the habit, and then a few months later I'm going to be disgusted with how I feel and lethargic and all that.
You're right.
And then I'm going to want to get into it. Well, the hardest part about fitness is starting
Oh yeah.
The hardest part.
It is.
So if you can learn to just be consistent, and even if you have to take one day off, don't take more than 3 days off and do something. Just get moving.
Right.
That's going to help you stick with the habit, and it's always easier to lose weight if you're not already gaining 15 pounds before you got to lose that again. It's easier to just lose the 5 pounds, or with running, it's easier to just kind of stick in the habit and then get back into your peak shape rather than like completely quitting and having to start over and get that pace again. Yeah,
that's hard, because we don't always need to be like ready to run a half marathon today, right? And so it's okay to back off and just enjoy the running again, because it can be exhausting sometimes to train for something, because your mileage has to go up and there's a little bit of pressure there and stuff, which is fun. But it also, like, by the time you're done especially for a full, I feel like by the time I'm done training for a full, it's like, I need a break from training, but not necessarily from running, right?
Or even fitness in general, right? So so many people are like, I'm gonna do this race, whether it's a half marathon or a full marathon, and they might go like all in, and then after that they like never run again,
right?
And it shouldn't be like that. You should be able to peak it when you need to, if there's a big race or competition you're getting ready for, and then allow yourself some time to recover, maybe get into some yoga or strength training after that, and just switch it up, change it for your body, allow yourself to recover, but then for your mind as well, to do something different, so that you're still maintaining a fitness level, but not necessarily peak marathon condition,
not having to push it every day. That's cool. So what advice then would you have for a runner just starting out, just kind of where you were a few years ago, when you're just looking into like, I know I should run, or I think that it'd be good for me to run, what would you say to that person to help them get started?
Obviously, just get started. If you
Yeah.
think you should run, you start running.
Right.
But I would say the same thing I told my mom. Just take it easy, focus on consistency and being able to repeat it. So don't worry about necessarily pushing it so hard at the beginning, but just learning how to enjoy the process. And if you enjoy the process, you're more likely to stick with it.
Yeah.
And then when you stick with it, you're going to get those results as far as running faster race times and running
Right.
farther distances and those things.
Perfect. I would 100% agree. I always say that really getting faster or getting stronger or improvement should be the natural result of just taking those right steps, right? It shouldn't necessarily be the focus. Weight loss, for example, shouldn't necessarily be the focus of our exercise. It's not a great motivator in the end, and we tend to focus on the wrong things when we focus on weight loss as our goal, or running a faster pace as our goal. If we focus instead on kind of the process and the journey, and let the result be kind of the natural result of just doing the right steps.
Right.
That seems to be a little bit better motivator, a lot more enjoyable, and we beat ourselves up a little bit less for it.
Right. Yeah. Fall in love with the habits and the process, and
Right.
the results will come.
Yeah. Oh, you need to put that on a.
Yeah.
That's your next meme for your Instagram, right?
Yeah.
I love it. We'll have to tag that later. Perfect. Well, so any final words of advice for runners? Anything you'd like to share?
I would say stick with it. Give yourself some grace. That's something I'm always learning to do better, is give myself some grace and understand that everything we got to take in strides.
Perfect. All right. So again, this is Alexis Gerst. Tell us where we can find you. So blog, Instagram, and Facebook.
So my blog is, like I said earlier, www.runningmybestlife.com. My Instagram handle is @running_my_best_life, because
Perfect.
the whole thing was already taken.
Yeah.
And then if you just search Running My Best Life on Facebook, you can find my page there as well.
Perfect. Awesome. So we'll put those links in the comments down below, so you can find it. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on with us today. We're really excited. We're about to go do a metabolic test. We did one a couple of weeks ago, but then I got a new analyzer, so I was like, we got to bring you back and have you test on that. So pretty fun stuff. We'll see how it goes. Thanks so much for joining us on the Body Smart Vodcast, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Body Smart Podcast. Join us in the Body Smart community on Facebook to share your successes or ask a question for our next episode. Now get out there and take the next step toward living your active lifestyle.